What if I told you that even though the samurai who said to live their life by this honorable code of Bushido, they still carried hidden weapons for surprise attacks? What if I tell you that samurai didn't always wear their sword on their left hip? What if I tell you there are times where the samurai didn't wear a sword at all? That's what we're going to be talking about today. We're going to dig a little deeper in traditional samurai history and culture. Now, before we begin, I just want to say, hit the subscribe button. I post videos every single day on our YouTube channel on traditional Japanese martial arts of the ninja and samurai, reality-based self-defense, and survival. So if you're interested in any of those topics at all, hit the subscribe button and keep up with what we're doing. Now, there's an old Japanese saying that says, there's nothing between heaven and earth that a man has to fear as long as he wears a sword at his waist. Now, this particular quote is easily attached to the samurai. However, many times people have a false image about the samurai because of movies and anime and video games. They tend to think that they know what the code of Bushido is, and they kind of put their own twist on it rather than looking at it from a historical perspective. Many times we talk about this samurai versus ninja, and if they was to duel, who'd win, the samurai or the ninja? And people tend to take this concept of the samurai lives this honorable code of Bushido, and the ninja doesn't live by a code, and they do anything that they can in the shadows to win. That particular expression or that particular explanation is very black and white, and to be quite honest, the difference between the two, ninja and samurai, it's not black and white. In fact, it's very blurred and very gray. Now, because so many people have this image of the samurai being completely honorable and living their code by this honorable way of Bushido, they would never carry a hidden weapon. This is farthest from the truth. Samurai actually carried hidden weapons. In fact, it was called shinobi-zashi. Now, shinobi-zashi, in this sense, the shinobi does not mean ninja or anything to do with ninja. The shinobi means secret or concealed. So there were times where samurai would carry hidden weapons because they know that there's going to be times where they have to remove their swords. So even though many people tend to look at the samurai that they would never do anything dishonorable or use trickery or deception in any way, it's furthest from the truth. Samurai actually carried hidden weapons. Now, when you watch classical swordsmanship being practiced today, we always see that everyone practices with their sword on their left hip. So it kind of gives this image that everyone tends to believe that the samurai only carried the sword on their left hip. That's furthest from the truth. The samurai actually carried their swords a variety of different ways. They would wear it on their left hip with the blade up. They would also wear it on the left hip with the blade down, tied to the obi, which a lot of people have seen that kind of tachi style, or if they're on horses, that type of thing. We've also seen a variety of other type of ways of carrying the sword, whether it's on the back, across the back this way, on the back this way, depending on how they want to carry it and what their journey is. There's lots of different ways that the samurai would wear the sword, not just on the hip. One of the most interesting ways that a samurai would carry a sword was written by Hagihara Juzo in a 17th century manuscript called the Mizukugami. He says that the sword would be carried over the shoulder in its scabbard with one hand on the hilt and the scabbard leaning backwards, tip up in the air. Hagihara Juzo observes that the sword can be drawn from this position very quickly. So even though we see so many people practicing classical samurai swordsmanship like Ninjutsu and Iaijutsu, and they always have the sword on the left hip, yes, that's the correct way culturally to wear the sword, and that's the way that the samurai, for the most part, wore their sword. However, that's not the only way they wore it. They would wear it any which way that they needed, predicated on the situation to give them an advantage. Now, before we talk about when it's culturally correct for a samurai to not wear a sword, I just want to say this to all my subscribers who love the content that I post. Don't forget, we do have a memberships page. You guys can just go down, click join, become a member, and we have hours and hours and hours of stealth training, authentic ninjutsu, classical samurai bujutsu, reality-based self-defense, kobujutsu training, hours of footage. And once you join, you're gonna have access to the memberships page, and you'll be able to watch all of that exclusive members only video. So if you like the content and you're thinking about becoming a member, now's the time to do so. Just scroll down, click the join button, and start watching the exclusive footage that we have on our memberships page. Without a doubt, if you were samurai and you were in public, you always had an edged weapon. It doesn't matter. You have a katana, a wakizashi, a tanto. If you're samurai and you're traveling about, you are carrying an edged weapon. However, there are times that a samurai would not carry their sword because there's times that a samurai wouldn't wear the sword. And sometimes people get that historical point a little blurred. So let's take a look at some of the times that a samurai would not wear their sword. Number one, in their own home. Just like anybody else, they're gonna come home, they're gonna take things off, and they're gonna take their sword off and have a specific place that they place the sword when they're in their own house, whether it's in a specific sword rack like you see around here or whatever, but they have a certain spot that when they get into their own home, they remove the katana and they put it in a specific place. Number 2 would be at night when they're sleeping. So they're not sleeping wearing their sword, right? But generally, while they're sleeping on their futon, they're going to have some sort of an edged weapon right next to the futon in case there's some sort of a surprise attack or some sort of emergency. As soon as they wake up, they can grab some sort of a sidearm and get to whatever it is that they need to do. Number 3 is going to be at specific social gatherings. Many times, samurai would go to different social gatherings within the traditional culture, and when they get to a certain spot, they would remove their sword as well as their outdoor gear, and they would put it in a specific spot, like some sort of like a cloakroom or whatnot, but they would put it somewhere and they would, go on with their social gathering. When they left, they would pick up their items, place them back on, and then go about their day. Number 4 is when they're visiting a person's house. Now, this is obviously going to have something to do with rank and social position and whatnot, but many times when they're visiting someone else's house, they would let their servant hold their sword for them while they're visiting someone else's house. Number 5 is going to be tea ceremony. When a samurai was at a tea ceremony, they would not wear their swords. They would actually put their swords, again, like if they were going to a social gathering, they would have their swords be placed in a specific spot, and then they would do tea ceremony, and when they were done, they would then get to the spot, they would put their weapons back on, and then go about their business. The next one's going to be at an inn. So when a samurai is traveling and they need to stay the night at an inn, when they get to their room and it's time to sleep, they would take their swords, the katana and the wakizashi, they would tie the sagyo together, start wearing their swords while they're sleeping, but they would tie the knot and the rope in a certain way that as they sleep, if someone was to break into the room or try to steal their swords, they would be able to react very quickly. But again, even when they're sleeping, just like before, they're not sleeping with their swords, but they're sleeping next to the swords. And the last one, which I think is an absolute no-brainer, and that is when they're bathing. When they're bathing, they don't wear a sword when they take a bath. So yeah, usually their servant would hold their sword while they're bathing, so on and so forth. But that would be another time that's culturally appropriate for a samurai to not wear a sword. There you guys go, a little samurai history and tradition for all of you. So yes, there are times that a samurai would carry a hidden weapon. No, the samurai didn't always carry the sword on their left hip. And yes, there were times that a samurai did not wear a sword. Now, the information that I shared with you guys today came from a book called The Book of Bushido. Right here, it is written by Anthony Cummins. It is a massive book. It's a great book for anybody who wants to learn more history and tradition of the samurai. Highly recommend it. A link to this book is going to be in the video description below. So if you don't have this book on your shelf, make sure you buy the book. Just go to the description, click the link, and you can pick up the book there. I also want to say if you guys are interested in training in authentic ninjutsu and classical samurai bujutsu, please check out our website at budo-ninjutsu.com. If you don't live next to one of our dojos, you guys can always join the Budo online ninjutsu dojo and start training that way. So thank you guys very much for your love and support. I deeply appreciate it. Until next time, take care, be safe, and good luck in your journey of Budo. Bye.